Today, truck drivers and their families are making a big statement in capital cities right across this country. Truck drivers are the backbone of the Australian economy, carrying freight in our cities, our regional areas, and from one side of this massive nation to another. And today, truck drivers and their families are angry. In fact, they're rage-filled. In fact, they're rage-filled because Australians in their hundreds keep dying on our roads in truck crashes. The federal government is doing nothing. And they're rage-filled because 2 years ago, this federal government abolished the one thing that was making a difference. The road safety watchdog was starting to do its work and make a difference on our roads. Since this federal government abolished that watchdog, 388 Australians have lost their lives. Make no mistake, another report this week says that this is the deadliest industry in the country. 40% of workplace deaths occur in this industry. 4,410 serious injuries a year in this industry. And the federal government is sitting on its hands. 20% of employers report that they have to break the rules simply to get the job done. The key here is that the government knows the answer. 25 years of evidence have told us that it's those who are taking the economic benefit out of this industry, the banks, the oil companies, the manufacturers, major retailers like Aldi, who just refuse to sit down and talk about safety in its supply chain. They're the ones that are at fault, but rather the federal government says that more fines should be put on drivers. Well, drivers and their families are here today to say enough is enough. Drivers are not the problem. The problem is the economic big businesses at the top of transport supply chains. And it should come as no surprise that this federal government is supporting big business. Wherever profits of big business are in danger in this country, you can see the protective hand of this federal government out there giving them a lift. This time though, it's at the expense of the Australian road using public. The Australian public is part of this peril. 2,542 Australians in 10 years are dead because of truck crashes in our country. The time's come for action. The time's come for this federal government to stand up and put a body in place that can inquire into this industry and hold those big businesses to account so the slaughter on our roads can stop. Thank you. Handing over to Richard Olsen, the State Secretary in New South Wales.
Thank you, Michael. In support of what Michael has already indicated, here in New South Wales, of course, we also have continuous problems with the state government. Whilst we have a minister in charge of this industry who believes that electrocuting drivers is a solution, we're way off the mark. We need solutions, as Michael's outlined, as what this country is dying out for. And we need the state government to stand up and be accountable to that regime of effectively getting into the boardrooms of big businesses and make the change happen. I'd also like to introduce Tony Matthews, who's an owner driver who's had many decades experience on our roads, to have a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Look, I've been in the industry a long time, and we can see since the Remuneration Tribunal has been put to bed that the pressures are just mounting daily. As you can see today, the amount of guys that have turned out, this is through sheer frustration. The pressure is mounting day in, day out. The corporate greed seems to be, let's attack the owner drivers and or the transport industry in whole. That's where they're going to try and increase their profit margin. Look, again, as I say, we need these people to be accountable. We're trying our best out there, but it comes to the stage where the best isn't good enough in the eyes of corporate. Now, as I say, it's a hard slog at the coalface, but we're asking now today to highlight the problems that we're facing on a daily basis.
Right. I'd like to introduce Kevin Crisp, another driver from Sydney.
Thanks very much, Richard. Thanks for turning out. basically want to say I work for a company that believes in paying good money for their employees, but I also believe that there's a lot of people out there that drive for other people that cut corners. And by cutting corners to put food on the table, undercuts everybody else. And not only me as a driver, I'm also a dad. And when I'm out on that road, I need to know that the other person coming the other way, especially in the trucks, are on good money. They're not sleeping, they're not being pushed to go out and do other things and cut corners. We need it to be safe. And whatever needs to happen, because we all need to stand up and make a say of what we want to do. Thank you very much.
Michael Daly.
We're hearing from and seeing today truck drivers that are not happy and they're determined. They're not happy because of the way they're being treated. They're determined to do something about it. Congratulations to the TWU for caring not only for truck drivers but for all road users, because the federal and state governments sure don't. Safe rates save lives is not just a slogan, it's a simple matter of fact. Truck drivers are being put at risk every day because of commercial practices, and it's not acceptable. There are comprehensive safety laws in all industries right across Australia, but in the transport industry there's a massive weakness, and that weakness is making our roads unsafe. When you pack the kids into the Commodore and you head off on your holidays and you come across truck drivers on the road, you want to know that they're being well paid, that they're rested, that they're not taking drugs, that their trucks are being properly maintained. At the moment, that is not the case. Everyone who hops in a car right across Australia needs to know that the Turnbull government and the Liberals in Australia have made this a matter of ideology. It's not a matter of ideology, it's very simple. It's about fairness and it's about safety. And it's the federal government were on the cusp of fixing this problem, and then they pulled the pin on it, and that's just completely and utterly unacceptable. Everyone on the roads deserves better than what's happening in Australia right now.
Sam Crosby.
G'day guys, my name's Sam Crosby, I'm Labor's candidate in Reid. I'm here today because I'm running against the Small Business Minister in the federal government, and there is a crisis in the small business sector that he seems blithely unaware of. Right now, for the last 2 years, we've seen over 800 small businesses in the truck driving and transport sector go to the wall. We know that before they go to the wall, they will do whatever it takes to keep their businesses open, to keep the wheels turning, to keep the money coming in. And all too often, that means that truck drivers' lives are being expended and being easily exploited by big business in this country for their own gain. We need to do better by these guys. Good on the TWU for standing up for them.
Any questions?
So, Mike, what would you like to see happen now? I mean, because obviously, look, we've covered these sorts of protests over many years. It's a complaint we have over and over again, but nothing seems to happen. What do you mean?
Well, it is a complaint that keeps happening over and over again, and I think that so far as we know, we have seen an increase in New South Wales, 92% of people dying on our roads in truck crashes. It is simply not good enough for a federal government to sit on its hands and say that drivers are to blame. Clearly they are not. Clearly the pressures in this industry are to blame. Clearly that those at the top of these supply chains need to be held to account. We need an independent body back in place in this industry. An independent body that directs those at the top of chains to take this pressure off drivers, because it's only when that pressure is lifted that we're going to see lives on our roads saved. Every day that passes, this federal government has blood on its hands, the blood of Australian road users.
Could we just have a chat again with one of the drivers? I don't know who wants to step up. Yeah. Just right up nice close to the mic. So what sorts of things? What sorts of things are you seeing happening that drivers are forced to do?
Well, again, personally, because I work out of a New South Wales system and we have regulations under our Chapter 6, which gives us protections and rights to recover costs. But I go to sites where, that's not the situation. We have interstate guys coming through that have been moving from Melbourne into Sydney and then off into a region after that, clearly exceeding hours. And there seems to be no accountability.
So driving too long, not getting enough rest, Just explain some of the dangers.
Well, you just explained it yourself. Driving too long, not getting enough rest. The monetary side of it, there's no... You can pay a bloke anything to They're saying you can pay anything to drive from Melbourne to Sydney, and there seems to be no account, regardless whether that Blind Freddie can see that it's impossible to do the task for that amount of money. There's no system there to help those guys to be regulated that has to happen. So, unfortunately, that leads to where we're at today, and that is they're exceeding their hours budget, and it's only on the back that they have to make a living.
We didn't hear any of that.
We're not endorsing what those guys are doing by any means. That's not the issue. We're saying is that there's the academics support it, that the correlation between payment and fatalities is a dead set reality. So what we're saying is that, as in the New South Wales system, where there is a minimum, you have to be paid a certain amount, you have to be able to cover your costs for your vehicles and so on. We need that to be reintroduced into the federal system so we can clean up our roads. It's been going on far too long. Everyone's in agreement, but nothing seems to be done. And this government at the moment seem to not really care. I'm just in sheer frustration, as I said earlier. This is what happens today: is that all these people come off their workplace to come out to voice their protest, so that someone will listen, because it's not happening on the work sites.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.